Alright, so in this video we are going to be making our first LED neon sign. So we're going to start off with a small project. We're not going to go crazy to start off. So this was a entertainment stand, a big giant old school entertainment stand, but it's all oak plywood. So we're going to utilize it for our backer board. So our sign backer board that we need a 20 by 15 blank. So I've just measured over 20 inches. We're going to whack that off. We'll probably just leave the height because once we take 15 inches out of this, there won't be much left of it. I think it's 22 inches or something like that, so there won't be much usable wood left. But this will be fine for this particular project. Okay, so we have our piece all cut out here. I just reinitialized my machine, so we are good to go on that. Now, if I had to do it over again, I went 0.2 inches deep, and I didn't really need to go that deep, but I think it's going to work out fine. But if I had to do it over again, I may not have gone so deep. But we'll go ahead and clean this up, get it all sanded. Probably going to stain it, I think. And then we'll look at putting in the LEDs. Okay, so we've got it sanded down. And now I rounded over the edges just a touch with the sander. So now what we need to do is we need to drill our wire holes. So every segment is going to need one hole. And so that's what we're going to go ahead and figure out how exactly we're going to route the wiring and drill a hole. So like here, we're going to start right here with our A, because this is where the power cord connection is going to go. So we'll drill a hole right there, and here, and here, and here, probably here and here for this piece. It comes looping around. Drill a hole here, etc., etc. So we're going to drill all of our holes for our wiring. And then we can take a look at what we need to do for soldering the wires to our LED segments here. Okay, so I have all of my holes drilled, and you can see that each segment has one hole. Okay, all the way through. So each segment has one hole. This is the wire that we're going to be using, and this is a 20 gauge wire. Now I will go ahead and link this in the description. I bought this at Amazon, and one of the key things that you will have to kind of keep note of is on this wire, if you look closely, you'll see that one wire has this kind of gray dashed line and the other one doesn't. And what that's going to help us for is determine what's positive and negative, because that's going to be important when we go to do the wiring. So our positive is going to be the dashed gray line, and then the negative will be the one without that. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because this is the first time I've done this, I'm probably going to, I don't know, cut this to maybe something like that, like maybe 4 to 6 inches. Let's see here, let me grab a ruler of some sort and tell you. Yeah, I think let's do 4-inch. So I'll make up a bunch of 4-inch. I'll count how many holes I've got and make a bunch of 4-inch lengths here and use that. We won't need it that long, but we'll just go ahead and make them all 4 inches long. And then I am going to split these wires too. I think that ultimately will be easier for kind of our next step. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut these to 4 inches, split the wires. I'm going to go ahead and on one end, I'm going to strip the wire that's going to connect to the LED. And then we'll talk about cutting our LED segments. Okay, so we have all of our LEDs put in place in the channel, and it does actually work out pretty good. So I'm happy with that. Now, these all worked out really well because the artwork So remember we talked earlier about these segments, okay? So depending on what LED we're using, those cut segments are real important. Our artwork has to line up to those cut segments. And we have a separate video that shows you how to line all that up so that this length starts and stops exactly on that black line. And that is true with all of these lengths. Like this is one segment, one segment, one segment. This is one segment. That's one segment. But then the rest of these are multiple segments. And so we have to make sure they land exactly. If we were to cut in between those lines and we weren't exact, then part of the LED would be dead. Okay, it wouldn't light up. Because we'd be cutting right through an LED. So that's one thing that's real important, that we get their artwork. Now, for this particular example, I didn't get too fancy with it. Now you'll see some videos where they'll actually, you know, cut these at an angle where they're connecting here. So see how there's a slight gap there? Some will actually cut it at an angle and do all that business. But I didn't do that. We just keep it nice and simple. But I think it's gonna, you know, still look just fine. So now that we know everything fits, now what we'll do is we'll pull out all of the LED pieces and we will attach all of our wires. So now we have all of our wires done. And what we've done here is, you can see on one end, we've stripped the wire just a tiny little bit to be able to solder to all these LEDs, okay? So what now we're going to do is we're going to stain our board, and then we're going to add the wires to all these LEDs, and then we'll flip it over and we'll show you how to wire it all up on the back side there. We've got Abby putting the little balls of solder on and soldering all the wires. Key thing is make sure positive's on positive, so she's tinning the wire. It's called tinning. We put a little bit of solder on the wire itself, and then hooking it up. All right, so let me bring you up to date on a few things that we came across, some things we like, things we don't like, etc. So first of all, started out kind of slow on the soldering end of things, but now we really got that down pat, so we're moving along nicely on that. I have all of these segments cut, and what I did here is I've just exposed the little pads that we're soldering to, just cut off just a little bit. Now, I don't necessarily like, if you look here, there's just a little notch on each segment. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal in the end. The one thing that I would do differently, I think, is the channels. Now this actually works out kind of good, so I'm kind of going both ways on this. So the channels were cut to the exact length that of the segments. And while I like that, and the reason I like it on the one hand is where the wires go in, because of the thickness of the wire, it's actually a little bit bigger, but now these pieces can hold in there because they really have to be wedged in there to fit. Not width-wise, but length-wise. And so I think we don't have to glue it down or anything, and I think it'll work, you know, just fine, because this is going to hang on the wall, so it's not going to be, it's not a toy, it's not going to be messed with. So that aspect is okay. Like I said, the soldering, we've got this little thing, little soldering helper. We're not really using that. As you can see, it's just kind of easier to do it on the table. I bought this, it was only $20. It does come with a magnifying glass. But unless you do a lot of work with the magnifying glass, that magnifying glass can kind of throw off your perspective a little bit. And so we just went straight to the table, and it seems to be working real good. I will link in the description the LED strip we're using. I'm just using a cheap, inexpensive LED strip. It's $8. Doesn't come with a power adapter or anything like that. I did order some power adapters, and we have a video on power adapters and how to calculate required power adapters and things of that nature. Now this is a really tiny sign, so it's not going to require a lot of power. So I went with the 3 amp version of the power adapter. But if I was ordering power adapters, I would tell you just get the 5 amp version. Across the board, might as well. They do make a similar power adapter in 7 and 10 amps as well. But I would say most of your signs, unless you're creating something really huge, there's just a 1 color sign. It doesn't flash and do anything special. You know, it's just going to be either on or off. Although I am going to put a dimmer in it, so you'll be able to dim it, which would be kind of cool. But at any rate, I would at least get 5 amps. And that will take care of pretty much, you know, probably the majority of your needs. Okay, so anyhow, you could see here, you see where I notched out the silicone just a tiny bit, and we see those wires. And like I said, I'm not super excited about that. It's totally not going to matter when it's lit up. Totally won't see that. So is it a big deal? No, but my OCD kind of gets the best of me sometimes. So I'm using 20 gauge wire, and the wiring specs does not require 20 gauge wire. So, but that was recommended to me in a video I was watching, so I just went ahead and went with 20 gauge wire. But if I had to do it over again, I probably would, you know, probably go with 24 gauge wire, and I might even go clear instead of white, or possibly even black. Maybe black wire would show up less here. I don't know. Like I said, it's just me being picky, because honestly, I don't think it truly matters, because you're not going to see it. At the end of the day, you're not going to see it. So it probably doesn't matter. All right, so that's some of our discoveries up to this point. And we're just gonna keep on going. We've got some more wires. She's gonna do a testing. And this thing is cool. So this just works off my Ryobi battery. It's got a voltage regulator that takes the 18 volt down to 12 volt. And then that gives us a cordless option to test. And then I bought these alligator leads that connect to this, which comes off our voltage regulator, and then connects to our strip over here. So that's a pretty useful tool as well for doing our bench top testing. Now here she's running into a situation where this segment doesn't appear to be working, but sometimes it's just a bad connection. But now you can see working all the way, so we know our soldering's good. But if you ever had a question, then we would test it right at the pads. That would be our backup plan. So if we test it, we would test it right at the pads just to double check it. All right, so that's it for now. So we're gonna go ahead and keep on going here and finish this up. All right, so we've kind of got this all figured out pretty much. We've gone through, we've tested everything on the backside after we put it on. We had some issues, we repaired the issues. We had you see a couple of segments here that we had some issues with. So we repaired those, but we're not throwing those away, because in a future sign, if we just need 2 or 3 segments, these are still good. Where our issue was, let me just see if I can show you one. The pad actually came off of the strip. So we couldn't use this because we'd have to cut it back to the next segment to get more pads. So this was dead to us, but we could use, 3 or 4 segment, 5 segment lengths, but this I think was 7 segments. So that's why we had to set that aside. So now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna strip just a little bit more wire all the way across. Now, here's the thing. When you look at other videos on this subject, they don't really talk about how to wire. Actually, I've never really seen it. I've watched so many videos, but I've never really seen them walk step by step how to actually go about wiring. Now, I've seen some guys do some really good wiring jobs. They just don't explain what it is they're doing. Now, for me, I'm just trying to get something created here. It's going in my kid's room. I have some ideas of how we're going to finish this off on the backside. It does not need to look pretty, okay? But it does need to function. So essentially, what I'm going to do, is connect all the positive wires and all of the negative wires. And then all the segments should line up, essentially. Now, when you're wiring things, there's two ways to do it. And there's if you wire in series and if you wire in parallel. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details of those two options, but there are some good videos on that topic, wiring in series and wiring in parallel. And this relates also even to your house, where you can wire in series and wire in parallel, like your kitchen lights. Okay, are they wired parallel? Are they wired in series? And there's various reasons to do both. But I just wanted to just kind of show you. So what we're going to do is we're going to wire in series. In other words, we're going to start here, connect this one to this one, and then connect that one to that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, all the way across. Okay, that's wiring in series. So I'll try to explain that a little bit once I get a little bit farther. Let me get all these stripped, and then we'll talk about actually how we're going to just wire them together and see how it all works. So now you can see we just gave us a little bit more working room on our wire. I'm going to start all the way over here and start putting these together. All right, so I'm going to explain this, but I'm going to give you a word of caution. Don't do as I do. Don't do as I say. Just understand that this is how I'm doing it. So I'm not a master electrician. On our first segment, we screwed up, okay? It was our first one. We put the positive wire on the negative terminal on the LED strip. So that's why on the first one, we're connecting the negative to the positive. But on all these pair segments, you can see all of these little dashed gray lines. They're all connected to one bundle here, okay? And then, because these guys would not reach all the way to our first master bundle, we created a secondary bundle. Okay, so we have this one and this one and this one and this one, all those pairs coming right here to this. And then because these wouldn't reach our second master bundle, we created a third. And there's 3 pairs that are connected there. Okay, boom, 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 boom. Now he's going to turn on a soldering gun, because what we're going to do, once we confirm that this works, we're going to go ahead and solder these bundles. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put some solder on those bundles. So then what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to create all of our negative bundles. Okay, so we're going to have 3 negative bundles. But then what we're going to do, in order to connect our secondary bundle to our first bundle, we'll just have a little jumper wire that goes from our positive bundle to our positive bundle, and then obviously our negative bundle to our negative bundle. So, and then same thing here. We'll have another little jumper wire going there. Okay. So anyhow, that's how we're going to go about doing that, and then it should all connect. So let me go ahead and finish putting all these bundles together. We'll get our jumper wires connected, and then we're going to test before we make this all permanent. So let me kind of share with you what we got going on here. We've got 2 bundles. So I've got 5 pairs in this first little cluster. Okay, so this is my positive cluster, this is my negative cluster. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this around, and I'm going to have my associate here, Abby, is going to connect the positive and negative of our power adapter. So I've got my power adapter here, and she's going to connect the positive and negative, and then see if my first 5 segments light up. We've not tested this. We're going to flip it over. She's going to connect the positive and negative. So no, that's the no, those 2 bundles. Yes, no. So we're going to do the positive, which is our white, the negatives are black. So she's going to hold it there, pull this one down, and hold it. Now don't be scared about touching the wires, because they're not, it's not going to shock you or anything like that. And if you look here, now let go. Take one wire away, okay, and put the wire back. So you can see that those first 5 segments are all lit up and working. Excellent. Okay? So we know that those first 5 segments are working. So now we know that our theory seems to be good. So we're going to just keep going, connect all the rest of my pairs. I'm going to connect my jumper wire, and then we're going to test. Okay, so let me show you where we're at up to this point. So what I did was I created this little, so this is our first positive, our second positive cluster going to the third. So we have this little jumper wire, okay? And then this is the negative side, and we have a little jumper wire there. So if we connect on either one of those 2 pairs, if we connect the positive and negative, we're gonna do this real quick, then this whole half of the sign should line up. So Abby's going to put the positive and negative. So again, the bottom is the positive, negative, and so you can see that whole side of the sign is lit up, okay? And that's exactly what we expected. So that's going to work fine. So now what we have to do is we have to go ahead and take our jumper wire from our first positive cluster over to our second, which then feeds the third, and that's why they call it in series. Okay? So, perfect. That's what we need. So now I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick, and then we should be able to see the whole side light up. All right. So, first positive cluster, we have a jumper wire going to the second, and then obviously one going to the third. So now, if we connect the positive and negative to the first set, we notice that our entire sign is lit. And that is excellent. Now, we're good on the front, but we have work to do on the back. We have work to do on the back in terms of lettering, or wiring rather, but we're going to do something a little extra because that's just how we roll. And we want to add LED lights to the back. And the reason we're adding LED lights to the back is so we get this kind of glow all the way around on the front side. So I've got some special LEDs for that. So I'm going to go grab those and we'll show you how we put those on. Okay, so here are our LED strips that we're going to wrap all around the back end here. And these, you can see that the little welding or the little soldering tabs are pretty close together. So that's one advantage that these do offer. So we're going to go ahead, and these already have a lead on them. So we're going to leave that lead on them, and then we're going to go ahead and put these on real quick. All right, so we went ahead and put on our strip. Now, it's going to look good. One of the things is on the strip, that adhesive that comes on our strips are usually not that good. So I kind of took a hack approach, as you can see here, and I used my upholstery stapler to staple the strip in place. And, you know, in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have, because I blew out those 3 lights and I blew out those 3 lights. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it's really gonna hurt what we're doing that significantly, but it is an issue. But if you could see now, you could see what that effect is going to have, because it's going to have a little backlit glow effect when it's sitting on the wall. And I see we also have an issue now with that particular wire, so we have to make sure those are properly connected when we put it all together. Okay, so a couple little issues there, but not too significant of an issue. So we will go ahead and finish connecting these wires up, and then we'll talk about the dimmer and the power adapter, and then this one will be finished. Now this is what I'm doing to mine. I put about, I don't know, about 4 or 5 foot of cord on my power positive and negative, and ran this big long cord 4 or 5 foot to a pigtail here, and I just put a little bit of solder on that joint before I use my shrink wrap over those two. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add the shrink wrap to those two. So what this will do for us is, you can see here now we have a nice shrink wrap connection there. It gives us a little bit more stronger connection. The concept here is that there's enough cord here where this is all going to sit on the ground, so it's not dangling down the wall. So hopefully I've added enough cord for that to happen. And so this will plug into this little pigtail. This is a male. Will plug into our female end of our dimmer switch. This gives us an on-off control and allows us to control the brightness of the light. But it comes on this side, it comes out male, but we don't have a female because the power adapters come with a male end on them as well. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut this off and then wire the power adapter just like I did here. So I'm going to go ahead and wire that up the same way, but I got to cut this end off, strip this wire back, and then connect my power cord that way. All right, so we are pretty close to the end here. So, small problem. I wired this up, not really taking into consideration there's an in and out, so I had it hooked backwards. So this needs to be connected to the power adapter, which it now is, and then this side needs to be connected to our LED strip, which it now is. And so when we turn it on, you can see the power lights come on, and then we can also control the brightness on the strip as well. So we can have it full power or turn it way down and turn it off. So we now have an on-off switch and a dimmer. So I will link these in the listing description if you want this exact dimmer. So now what we have to do is just kind of finish this up. We're going to go ahead and tin this bundle with some solder to hold all those wires together, and then we'll just kind of, I don't know, I thought about using hot glue. That's probably what I'll do. Just kind of hold this stuff down and out of the way a little bit. And I'll probably cover all of these ends with some hot glue just to kind of, I do actually have some clear electrical tape stuff that I might use as well. So I might use some of that. I might use some of my staples to also hold down the wiring. That's another option. I want to make sure I don't wire into or staple into my wires, but that would get the job done too. So I'll just kind of clean that up a little bit and give you one last look. There's one other thing that we got to talk about once we kind of get all this in place, and what that is we got to have some blocks, some way to hang this so it sits off the wall a little bit, so we get that glow effect from our backlighting. So we're gonna have to figure that out, but before I do that, I got to get all these wires cleaned up a little bit. So this is the stuff I was talking about, this liquid electrical tape. I covered all my connections there. It does go on clear. They do make the same product in black. And then you can see what I did. I just kind of pinned down my wiring just a little bit, clean that up a little bit. Now what I have to do is figure out exactly how far away from the wall I want this to sit. Now, one thing to consider when you're doing this is the farther away from the wall, the more diffuse, more soft light you'll get. So I'm going to probably put it right at like probably 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch, something like that. That's what I'm thinking of trying. So I will try and rig something up so I can get that spacing that I want, and then we'll hang it up and see how good we do. So there we go. Nothing fancy, but I just took 2 blocks that are 5/8 of an inch and put them where I could, and then put a piece of wire across them, a couple of staples, and that'll hold it up. So let's go hang it up and see what it looks like. Well, there it is. The finished product doesn't look bad for our first effort, and you can kind of see that nice glow effect it has as well against the blue colored wall.